Last time, I told you this universe might be a projection, a three-dimensional image lifted out of information, and that leaves one obvious question hanging. If reality is written as information, how many dimensions is it written across? You feel like you live in three: left, right, up, down, forward, back. And yet the leading edge of physics keeps telling us that for reality to hold together at all, it needs 11. I was a quantum mechanics researcher, and I want to be honest with you from the start. 11 dimensions is not mysticism, and it is not a number someone made up to sound deep. It is the number the equations themselves demand. I am going to show you why. And then, at the very end, I am going to tell you where in the unseen dimensions I think your wanted future already exists, and what that means for how you reach it. Let us build this carefully from the ground up, so nothing feels like a leap. Start with 0, a single point. No length, no width, 0 dimensions. Now drag that point and you sweep out a line. That is 1 dimension. Drag the line sideways and you get a flat plane, 2 dimensions. Lift the plane and you get a solid depth volume, 3 dimensions. That is the world your body lives in. But there's a fourth you move through constantly: time. Einstein showed that time is not separate from space. It is woven together with it into a single fabric space-time. 4 dimensions, treated as one structure. And in his picture, gravity is not a force pulling on you. It is the bending of that 4-dimensional fabric. Mass curves, space-time, and things roll along the curve. So already, by the early 20th century, dimensions were not science fiction. They were just the number of directions reality needs to be described. Now here is the moment it gets strange, and it happened over 100 years ago. In the 1920s, 2 physicists, Theodore Kaluza and Klein, tried something almost reckless. They took Einstein's equations and added one more dimension of space, a 5th dimension, and something astonishing fell out of the math. Out of that single extra dimension, the equations of electromagnetism, light, electricity, magnetism appeared on their own. 2 forces that looked completely unrelated, gravity and electromagnetism, became one description just by adding a dimension nobody could see. And why can't we see it? Because they said that 5th dimension is curled up incredibly small at every point in space. Think of a garden hose seen from far away. It looks like a one-dimensional line, but walk up close and you see the surface wraps around. There is a 2nd dimension there, curled into a tiny circle you missed from a distance. That is the key idea you need to carry forward. A dimension can be real and still be hidden not far away, but curled up too small to notice. And adding one paid off enormously. It unified 2 forces. So extra dimensions were not just allowed, they were useful, which sets up the real engine of this whole story: string theory. And this is where the number 11 actually comes from. String theory makes one core move. It says, the most fundamental things in nature are not point-like particles. They are tiny, vibrating strings. And just as one guitar string can play many notes, the way a string vibrates is what makes it look like an electron or a photon or a quark. Different vibrations, different particles. It is a beautiful idea, but it comes with a demand that shocked even the physicists who built it. When you write the equations for these strings in our familiar 4 dimensions, the math breaks. It produces contradictions, impossible probabilities, infinities that should not be there. The equations only become consistent, only stop contradicting themselves in a specific number of dimensions. For the leading version, superstring theory, that number is 10. And in the deeper framework that unifies the versions, called M theory, it is 11. Sit with what that means. Nobody chose 11 because it felt spiritual. 11 is a number where the mathematics finally stops breaking. The universe, described this way, simply refuses to be consistent with fewer. This is the opposite of wishful thinking. It is hard equations, followed honestly, arriving somewhere no one expected and no one particularly wanted. The extra dimensions were not invited. They were forced in by the math. So the obvious question, if there are 11, where are the other 7 hiding? And the answer is the garden hose again, but richer. Those extra dimensions are thought to be compactified, folded up into incredibly tiny, intricate shapes at every single point of space. Physicists call these shapes Calabi-Yau manifolds. I do have to be straight with you here, because this is exactly where people overstate. String theory is one of the leading frameworks in physics, but it has not been confirmed by experiment. No one has measured these co-dimensions directly. Hold it as the most serious candidate we have for the deepest layer, not as settled fact. So here is the term. And from this point on, I am going to mark the line clearly. What follows is no longer string theory. This is my model, my interpretation. And I need to make one distinction sharp, because it is easy to blur. The extra dimensions of string theory are curled up, small, tiny, folded shapes. The dimensions I am about to walk you up are a different kind of thing. Not small folded spaces, higher levels that organize reality. Do not confuse the two. One is physics, the next is the model I use to think about where possibility lives. Because if reality really is lifted out of information across more than 3 dimensions as last time suggested, then there is room above our everyday world. So let me build that upper staircase with you. The 4th level, you already know. Take a solid and run it through time, and you get history, the single line of events that actually happened. Now step up. The 5th level holds the histories that could have happened, the parallel branches, every path not taken, all coexisting. Step up again. The 6th holds something stranger. Shift, which observer is at the center change, whose story is being lived, and you get a different world entirely. And above that, higher levels that gather and organize all of those observer worlds together, climbing up toward 11. And here is what that does to the idea of manifestation. In my model, the future you want is not something you build from nothing in 3 dimensions. It already exists as a branch on the 5th or 6th level. It is already there. So pulling it toward you is not creation out of thin air. It is movement. Manifestation in this picture is you relocating yourself to the branch where the thing you want is already real. You are not constructing the destination. You are traveling to it. Picture it concretely. Somewhere on the 5th level, there is a version of you who already did the thing, already has the work, the health, the relationship. That branch is not a fantasy you have to invent. In this model, it already exists, fully formed. The only real question is which branch you are currently standing in, and which one you are quietly walking toward. You are not begging the universe for something new. You are choosing an address that is already built. And this is exactly where it joins what we said last time. Information does not fit inside 3 dimensions. So your desire is not missing. It is simply not in your 3-dimensional present yet. It is written 1 level up. The gap is not, it does not exist. The gap is you are not standing in the branch where it does. So what steers the movement? The same thing we keep arriving at, you, the observer, and the inner state you hold. When you observe from the version of you who already has it, who already lives in that branch, your anchor begins to move toward that timeline. Attention is the rudder between the levels. Now let me clear up 2 misunderstandings, because they matter. First, do not walk away thinking higher dimensions are proven physics. The staircase is my philosophy. What the physics actually hands you is only the doorway, the hard fact that 3 dimensions are not the whole of reality. I am building on that doorway openly. Second, this is not wish hard and the room around you instantly rearranges. That is not the claim. You do not force the 3-dimensional present to mutate. You move yourself to a branch where it is already so. Which is why holding your inner state steady is the whole skill. It is the steering, not a magic trick. So in practice, it comes down to 3 things. Treat what you want as already existing, 1 level up, not as something to manufacture. Hold the observation of being the one who already has it. And when your present wobbles and tries to pull you back, do not answer it with your old self-image. Last time I called that scratching the screen. Same mistake, 1 dimension higher. So the staircase and the hologram and the observer effect are still saying one thing together. Reality has more levels than the one you are standing on. You are not trapped on the ground floor. And what you want is not far away in space. It is 1 level up, waiting for you to become the version of yourself who lives there. Which is the line I want to leave you with. What I want is not missing. It already exists, 1 dimension over. I move toward it by becoming the one who already has it. Say it slowly and mean it. What I want is not missing. It already exists, 1 dimension over. I move toward it by becoming the one who already has it. If that reached something in you, write it in the comments, in your own words. There is a reason I keep asking something happens when many people hold the same line at once. And one last thread, because it leads straight into where we go next. If consciousness really can reach across dimensions toward what it wants, then you should know that a government once tried to weaponize exactly that. For nearly 30 years, the CIA ran a secret program to reach across distance with the mind alone. It was called remote viewing. Next time I am going to open that file, I will see you there.